Brothers, Space Marine 2 has finally arrived. Good afternoon, sons and daughters of the Emperor. I am Doodleman149, and thank you for joining me today. Space Marine 2 is the highly anticipated sequel to the 2011 title. With the sequel being almost 13 years to the day since the last one, this glorious return to the battlefields of the far future has been a long time coming. Luckily for you, I've gotten first-hand experience with these battles a few days early. I'll be giving you all my first impressions of the quality of Space Marine 2. Keep in mind, at the time of this writing, I've only played the campaign. A multiplayer review will be coming later. And remember, if you end up liking this video, that little thumbs up is just begging for a push. Let's hop into this. The first thing I'll get into is the most important. How is the gameplay? As someone who hasn't played a third-person action game in quite some time, it took a little getting used to, admittedly. However, once I had a few minutes in the boots of Dimitri and Titus, the movement and combat of Space Marine 2 really shine through. In the beginning, you're facing off against a splinter fleet of a Tyranid hive fleet, so you face off against various Gaunts who are dwarfed by the size of your demigod super soldier. You learn how to dish out various melee combos, break guards, parry, and use ranged weapons all at the same time. Initially, it can be a little overwhelming, but as I said, a few minutes and a few battles in, and it's easy enough to pick up. However, just because it's easy to pick up does not mean it is easy to master. The hardest part so far is managing parrying. Some attacks glow red, meaning they have to be dodged. Blue glowing ones can be parried if timed perfectly, but then the wrench in the system is blocking generic attacks. It's just a little jarring seeing blockable and unblockable colors, only then have to manage all the other chaos on screen to properly block regular attacks as well. There was also a hard juxtaposition to elite enemies. You're introduced to a Tyranid warrior as a tough target you must duel, but then later on in the same mission, you get melee and ranged Gaunts intermixed with warriors, meaning you now have to run crowd control, deal with ranged threats, and duel sometimes multiple elite enemies all at once. Now, while these sound like gripes, I am really enjoying the challenge of this game, which is made even harder by me upping the default difficulty. While I've died a handful of times, winning those big battles is so much more rewarding when you don't simply bulldoze your way through the enemy. Some other gameplay points I'd like to touch on are the various pickup weapons you can find in the field. From alternate bolters to differing melee weapons, and even heavier weapons like the heavy bolter are all spread around levels to let you use what you need for certain situations. You also get saddled with AI, or even other player-controlled teammates after your first mission, and they do a good job of taking the heat and dealing damage while also picking you up when you're downed. The AI pathing has some issues on the occasion, but honestly, these are really solid teammates. Now let's move on to something superficial, the graphics. Graphics don't necessarily make or break a game, but I do really like how good all the Space Marines look in-game. Oddly enough, there are some rough spots in some of the cutscenes, but that could also be the case of my Series S not being able to render it in all its glory. Speaking of which, if you want to help me get my way to a Series X, I've got Patreon set up and the link is in the description. There's also merch you can buy, or if you're into energy drinks and want to try Dubby Energy, I've got a link to that in the description as well, and be sure to use code DOODLEFAN at checkout for 20% off. The next bit I'd like to discuss, without spoilers, is the story. I really like that the story of Titus is being continued basically directly from Space Marine 1 and how they integrate him into the current setting. Everything makes sense so far. The battles you partake in are epic in both scale and difficulty, and I'm liking the emerging side characters as well, particularly the head of the Cadian 8th in the second mission. She is really well voice acted. I'm excited to see where the story progresses and how it improves even more. The last point I'd like to comment on is some improvements I might be able to offer for the developers since this will be receiving updates down the line. I had an epic cutscene interrupted multiple times by the game saying I need to be online to play the campaign. Please, just please, do not require an internet connection if you are strictly playing the campaign solo. This is not the only game to do this, but I'd really like if something could be done on the back end to change that up. The only other improvement I can offer would be slightly improved AI and, oddly enough, a slightly improved tutorial. The tutorial goes over a lot of stuff which helps you get into the combat easily enough. But one very important thing they neglect to mention is how to use medical syringes, so I had to go mid-battle into the settings to find how to use these. Heads up, it is right on the directional pad if you're on Xbox. Add that to the tutorial and it will be perfect. And there you have it, my initial thoughts on Space Marine 2. At this point, even without trying the multiplayer, this is literally everything I wanted it to be. You take command of a badass Ultramarine taking on swarms of the deadliest Xenos in the galaxy in glorious melee combat combined with quality shooting mechanics as well. What more could you want? Have you played Space Marine 2 yet? If so, what do you think of the game so far? Let me know in the comments below. I do not regret pre-ordering an upgraded edition to get to play this early. It was definitely worth it to me. Come back soon for more coverage of Space Marine 2, and keep an eye out for some shorts on Tuesday as well. Also, don't forget to subscribe to keep up to date on when I post. So until next time, I've been Doodleman149, and I will see you later. For the Emperor!